with Kingston Lee-Young today. Among other things, he's the CEO and co-founder of the platform VRTY. Mr. Young, thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you for having me.
You started the company in 2016, is that right?
That's correct. At the November 2016, and I started it in Sydney with 3 other co-founders. And yeah, it was a very different time in 2016 versus where we are now.
It was, that's true. So can you tell us a few words about the platform? I would love from the viewers to hear that from you.
Yeah, so VRTY is a virtual reality and a 360 content development and sharing platform. So it's a bit of a mouthful. And for those people who, are interested in immersive technology, there's a lot of things to learn. There's a lot of things to do, and it can get quite technical.
Yes.
And so our thoughts, and so 3 of my co-founders are technical, so they're developers, full stack developers, and so we have very young families, and they were coming through school, and we thought, oh, this virtual reality thing is really cool, and we can see it in games. And about the same time, Oculus Rift was really making a lot of noise, and we thought, oh, how can we get this out to more people, but how do we make it a bit easier so that actually more people can experience it, more people can develop content on it, and it's not so difficult. So we sort of sat in a bit of a room like good developers do, and they come up with ideas. And so one of my co-founders, actually, he had this idea bubbling away for a very long time, and he thought, how do we do this? And so back at the time, I think virtual reality was very much about gaming, maybe about real estate, and so a lot of commercial type applications. But when we started to talk about it, we also very quickly talked about education and how over 100 years, really the classroom and the teaching and what students learn hasn't really changed a lot. And we thought, how do we make it more exciting? This virtual reality must sort of be able to help. And we thought, that would be great, because those people who don't like to read too much, and they like to be active learners, or they would just love to see things with their own eyes. They say, okay, well, let's start talking about different places. Let's do geography. How about we actually put a headset on, or we visit in 360, and then let's go to the actual place. And so all of a sudden, we talk about authentic learning. It's kind of the closest you can get to without having to get everyone onto a plane and flying them over there. So there's definitely a cost savings there. But yeah, that was kind of how we started. That like all good things in terms of a startup is, what do we want to try and do? What problem are we trying to solve? And that particular problem was, how do we democratize VR? And then how do we bring that into education, so that it can actually add value in changing the way that teachers teach and the way that students learn?
Of course, and that was 6 years ago. And then we had 6 years and a pandemic ago, because we had this this huge leap in education. We went kind of forward with the technology-wise, at least. So how has this been for you? How has this changed anything?
Yeah, look, it's been difficult. I think, like, most businesses, when something, like a pandemic comes through, it really changes everyone's normality. And so I guess on the one hand, we had a lot of interest in what we were doing. But as soon as COVID hit, schools, rightly so, were very much focused on, how do we keep students learning? If people are remote learning, how do we start to get to that? And I guess that's kind of the silver lining for us, is the conversations where we were trying to convince school leadership and education that they needed to focus more on technology and bring in more different tools.
Exactly.
COVID actually was, dare I say it, almost a good thing for us, because it really shocked the education sector into saying, wow, like if we can't have students in classes, then what are we going to do? And I guess, our sort of view is this is not about, turning education into a virtual school.
Yes.
And so, there's some ideas, and I know that there's a school in the US that's actually starting to do that. I think this is about a tool that helps school leadership and educators with different ways of helping students to learn. And so the prod on it was embracing technology, and that for a lot of teachers who were quite fearful of it, and maybe some schools weren't set up for it, all of a sudden they had to come up with solutions. And so we're now riding off the back of that. And so, 2022 is still a little bit dicey, but what we're actually seeing is there's a lot more interest now to say, well, this thing's not going away. We need to be thinking about how to plan forward for the next few years. And so all of a sudden they're saying, okay, well, are there any tools that are actually relevant and useful? And we're sort of becoming one of those options that are popping up.
Yes, exactly. I think that maybe teachers, they kind of had to embrace technology, whether they liked it or not. But as you say, the silver lining was that pretty much they had to figure out how to do their job from home, something that not everybody was used to. And this takes me to the thing about VR. I think that among all technologies, it's probably one of the most misunderstood ones, and it kind of feels intimidating for some teachers, from my experience at least. So how has it been for schools that you have spent time training and helping with integrating VRTY? How has it been for them implement the technology? Has it been easy?
No, it's been quite difficult, and I think it's like most change management requirements is, there still needs to be those innovators who really take the risk, and they need to go through and they need to forge the path. Certainly, when it comes to something as important as education, it's not really in the best interest of schools that are established to change their curriculum overnight to bring in something that's cool and trendy, and then go, okay, well, I don't know how this is going to work. So it really has been one of those slow burns for us over the years to say that momentum is growing, which I think is a good thing. We're starting to see more schools interested. And so I think probably 5 years ago, we were trying to convince educators around the validity of immersive technology.
Of course.
Now, as we start to come through, I think everyone really understands that this type of technology has some place in the school. It then is, well, how do I bring it in? And then in which learning areas, how do I bring it into curriculum? And then, is there any research or data out there around the benefits of it? So there's some big questions there. But then also from a practical perspective, the biggest challenge for teachers is, okay, great, I now have this technology and tool. What do I teach on the first day? How do I actually bring this in? What guidance do you have? What am I doing with it? And that's been the most interesting part now. And we are working with some great teachers and some really forward-thinking schools to try and solve a lot of those problems. And we have a world-first longitudinal research study with the University of Newcastle, the Association of Independent Schools in South Australia,
of course,
and some great schools there who are jumping on board. And they're very different types of schools. So we have Cedar College, which is predominantly a sports school.
Okay.
We have Pembroke, we have Trinity. We also have a Southern Montessori school.
Also,
well.
you have a mix of different schools that specialize in different kinds of studies. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And one of the great things about that research is that we not only have a great researcher in Erica Southgate there, who is really driving the overarching sort of research piece. We have support from the association, we have support from leadership, but we also have the teachers as our co-researchers. And so they are going through and they're documenting their experiences. They're actually looking at their learning areas, their classes, and they're coming up with the curriculum design, through that. And I guess that part is really exciting for me because, all the challenges that they're going through, every teacher around the world is sitting there going, great, can you go through that, do the hard yards, and then afterwards we'll see. And some really lovely stuff is coming up, and we're looking forward to reporting on the results, a few times a year, and this will be running for the next couple of years.
The next couple of years. So this is my question for you now. Why research? You talk about research so much. We know why, but can you tell us more about why? Because it's something that takes a lot of work. It's research.
Yeah. Look, I think it comes down to us wanting to do this right. So we know with the technology that there is a myth that, look, it's just for entertainment and gaming, and if you bring mobiles into the classroom, it's going to distract kids. And so I as the founders of the business, we're also very fortunate that we're mid-career co-founders. So we've had a lot of experience in the digital world, in the corporate world. And so I guess we needed to prove the validity of the technology, that if we wanted to bring it in, there has to be some sort of positive benefit. And up until that point, there's a lot of academic, research, well, I guess academic, but there's a lot of top line thinking that says, okay, well, logically, this makes sense.
Yes.
However, because of the cost of the technology, or the fact that, I guess there's different ways of experiencing it, it's very difficult to do that large scale sample size and research. And I guess the way that we have created our platform, we are all about scale, we're about flexibility, we're about working on a number of different platforms and devices. So we can actually provide a lot of the research data around it. And actually had a really good conversation with the team today about not only can we track viewer analytics, so what the viewer will see of a project, we can also track creator analytics. And so this is something that we're going to be looking at, that almost on 3 levels, or 4 levels. One is from VRTY. We would love to see how people build projects in our platform. 2 is from a research perspective. And so then we want to actually be able to come out and say, here are the actual benefits of bringing the technology in, and we have the proof to back it up. From a teacher's perspective now, there's a lot of pressure to go, okay, well, show me results, give me the data. And so we can actually provide a lot of that data to show the teachers what the students are doing, and then trying to work out, again, how to look at that and show that the students are learning, or they're doing things which are in line with what they want coming out. Oh, and then also from an association perspective, having a look at it across multiple schools to go, how do we compare different schools and what's happening in each of those?
I mean, it's your pride to say that you have actually created something that works, because now that educational technology in general has started to get some heat and get a little bit trendy in the educational world, because at least here in Greece, I don't think it was that popular, because even now we don't really use technologies as actively as we should, at least in my opinion. But teaching can get very chaotic if you don't plan well. And it can get even more chaotic when you use a tool that you don't really know how to use. So this was one of the things that I really loved when I first was looking for a virtual reality platform. I was looking around and I didn't know exactly what to look for. And then I went onto your website and I saw authentic learning, for example. And I understood that here there are some people who actually care about the theoretical background of the work. Have you, from your experience, how have been students reacting to VR? Because I haven't seen it so much as you, at least.
Yeah. Look, I think students these days are growing up as, we call them digital natives.
Yes.
And so from a very young age, we have a mobile phone pointed in their face, and we're taking photos of them. As soon as they get to a certain age, we distract them with technology. So I think to them it's second nature. And so for the students that we've seen, as soon as we start talking about it, they get really excited. They get a little bit giddy. And it's almost like, oh, this is fantastic. We finally get to play with something, and that's been a really interesting thing for some schools where they're starting to see this excitement. And so yesterday we had a launch, the official launch of the program into CEDA, and a lot of the teachers came out, the students came out, and we launched it to them. And they got very, very excited about it. And all of a sudden, people were drawing, coming up with different ideas of what they wanted to do. And so I guess the point there is that the students will always love technology. Yes. That's what we're training them to do right now. That's what the world is asking of them and showing them. I think the next part is going, well, make it really easy for them to use, let them play with it, let them get over the playing with the tech, and then come back to education. So, what are the instructional requirements? What is the challenge? How do we link it back to curriculum? How do we get them to use it as just another tool? And the students are actually really good in that respect. And I guess one thing that we've found with some of the smaller sort of classroom research that we've done is we've been able to engage girls even more than the boys in terms of using the platform. And so when it comes to IT, technology, ICT, STEM, it's always been a bit of a struggle. Yes. But now we actually have this platform where it is more about storytelling. It is more about content creation, using their creativity, as well as using the platform as well, with science or engineering or maths or even other things. And so we are seeing that there's actually applications across all learning areas.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned storytelling, especially because there are many teachers who teach more theoretical subjects like languages, history. And while we see a lot of maps and a lot of simulations for physics and chemistry and all that, they feel a little left out, maybe rightfully so, I don't know. And they think that, well, I teach ancient Greek, for example. How am I going to use VRTY, or, how I'm going to use immersive technologies into that? Do you have any examples maybe you could share with us?
Yeah, and look, I think the power of immersive technology is that you almost have these superpowers. So you can transcend space. Yes. So you can be on the other side of the world. You can transcend time. So you can move forward and backwards in time. But then the other thing is you can also change perspective. So it's always difficult to walk in someone else's shoes and understand their world. But if you actually can create that world, put a headset on, all of a sudden you're seeing the world as they see it. Yes. And we're seeing a lot of really good schools embrace that. And we have a great teacher, Hayden, who's in Western Australia. And he's got so many great ideas, and with limited resources and access to content, what he did was create this little diorama within his classroom. And so he just got tables and chairs, created it into a sort of a square. The students helped him create little models of a Roman museum.
Oh, that's
and
so
then
creative.
in little parts, created little experiences. So it's the physical learning as well as the technology, but they each sort of worked off into groups and then created little parts of the story to put in that little rectangle square. And then he put a 360 camera in the middle and then filmed that. And so then all of a sudden the experience was able to change perspective. It was able to bring in some of that learning. The students really then also understood each of the different areas, and they had to tell that story. We put that into the VRTY platform, and then they were able to add more content to it, some interactive content. They could jump around. And so it kind of brings out a lot of the sort of ingenuity. I mean, teachers are always amazing in terms of just coming up with so many great ideas with limited resources. But that type of an approach where, the subjects that are there, and if I can sort of make a point, is I think teachers are great at working out how to bring the subject matter to life for students and to engage them at different levels, rather than worrying about the technology and the tools and other things. And I guess that's what we're trying to do, because the kids will always pick up things far more quickly than anyone else.
They do.
And so we've seen that is, as an educator, don't worry about trying to learn all the ins and outs of the tech. The students will pick it up, and you'll always have a few of the students who just pick it up so quickly. And then we've actually found that they've been able to teach and guide and help the other students in the class. So then the teacher just has to worry about, right, are they sticking to task? Do they understand what they're trying to do?
The small things. I find this very fascinating, because I remember the first time I used the VRTY, I was with my niece. She was 9 back then. So we were looking at the tech, and I was trying to figure something out. I don't even remember what that was. It was the first time using the platform. And she was like, oh, you just take that and you move it here and that's it. And I just realized how being born into tech changes you as a person, and how it changes your way of seeing things. And that takes me to another thing that I noticed. I noticed that you can create something that looks like a flowchart. I think you call it a storyboard.
Storyboard.
The storyboards. And it's a feature that took me back to my coding years in high school. And I thought, well, that's computational skills right here. So there's more skills that you can cultivate in the process of creating the content. Have you actually, was this planned out?
It kind of was. So I guess we were very lucky with our sort of, corporate careers. There's a lot going on around in terms of design thinking. And so really thinking about the user, user experience is a really sort of a popular term right now. But for a lot of that, it's actually about how do we help the person that we're targeting to have a better experience, or what problems, how can we solve for them? And so in the whole onboarding process, there's a lot to learn in terms of immersive technology. And so it's not like watching a film. A film or a video is very passive. The director, the creator chooses what you get to see. They have cutaways, they have different angles, they have close-ups. And so you're watching really somebody's execution as an audience. Once you get into immersive tech, you actually become an active participant. And so that really changes the game to say, well, all of a sudden, as someone who's creating you have to think about these options that the audience now will have control. You don't have control anymore. You just put things up and they get to choose what to interact with. And so that's a lot more like real life. And I sort of love this story of taking students to an exhibit. You know, if you go on a tour, you go to a museum. And one of the problems with that is, you know, you've got all these students, you want to make sure that you don't lose anyone, and then you quickly go through all the exhibits. And some of the students are there going, look, I'm really interested in this particular thing. But because the group's moving on, they get shuffled along. It's like, okay,
Yes.
come on, we have to move to this next one. And so, you know, again, it's a very passive experience. And so now with this, I guess the active participation, the students now get to spend time on the things, or the audience gets to spend time on the things that they want to spend time on. And so I guess as we start to go through that, it opens up this whole new world now about how do you design these interactive worlds. Now, we took a lot of guidance from gaming. So I guess students play a lot of games. So they understand these concepts where you can transport and teleport between one world and the next. They like interacting with things and learning. And so we started taking some of those ideas and said, okay, well, if we had the opportunity to create these worlds, what are the things we don't want? And so the first thing we didn't want is a passive experience. So there's ones on, you know, you can go onto YouTube and you can look at 360 images. You know, all you really do is get to look around,
Yes.
but you don't get to control anything. So it's really lovely. You can surf a wave in Chopu and the, you know, French Polynesia and look around. Not many people get to be in a wave, but there's not much interaction there. So we started to say, if we broke this up to then say, well, if each scene had the ability to tell a story, and then within that you can put other content, and then the viewer gets to choose where they get to go to next. You probably still could have a linear story. However, there are natural sort of storytelling breaks, a bit like a chapter in a book.
Yes.
Where you get to that point, you stop, and then you know, some people will read through very quickly, others will take their time and explore things, but there's a natural stop there, but then they can move on to the next part. And so that's when we started to create this idea of the storyboard. And then we started to talk about the idea of, well, what happens if you wanted to offer someone a choice? You know, do you want to take the left path or do you want to take the right path? You know, what should we do here? You have an option. And all of a sudden, it starts to open up this new world of, you know, what Erica calls a branch narrative. And so as a viewer or someone participating, they have to make a choice. So all of a sudden, you can start thinking, well, now we've got decision-making skills that can be brought into this whole experience. You have someone explore your content, but now they have to participate. They have to make a choice.
Yes,
Do you
exactly.
offer two different options? Do you offer 3 different options? And then that can change the way the story is told. And then you can not just tell one story, you can tell 3 stories, and then they can link around. And then we can get all the way to the point where it's a complete choose your own adventure, where you can just go wherever you want. And so there's a really lovely opportunity there now to really change that whole way that people think about designing stories in the immersive world.
You know, one of the things that we're really trying here in my master's as well is to provide for as many ways of learning. So visual, we try to also present people with text, anything we can, even games. So I think this really opens a road to more personalized education that we're getting there. I think we're almost there for many things so far, and especially after the distance education thing, when it became apparent that there needs to be something like that. And one thing that I really want to highlight is the fact that it's not mostly teachers who avoid immersive technologies, for example, but it's the people who make the decisions behind them. So what do you think that are some myths about VR that are not true at all, and that actually give it a bad image rather than a good image?
Yeah. Look, I think definitely for the education industry, but then also for corporates as well. We're talking corporate education and training. Is the first myth would have to be that it's expensive, and that if you want to do it, you have to buy the highest end technology, and then only one person gets to use it at a particular time. And then to create content for it, it's a long development cycle, and again, very expensive. And I think it is correct in that sense. If you are looking at the top end of the whole spectrum, so certainly, the likes of HTC Vives and Oculus have this amazing experience, and you've also got the Microsoft HoloLens as well. That the affordances at that level are fantastic, right? And you want a lot of that power to do things, but is that right for what you're trying to do with it? And so I guess that would be the question that comes back is, do you need that high end?
Of course.
And what are you trying to do with it? In I guess the corporate world, I have this idea of crawl, walk, run, fly. And so a lot of people, with a whole range of things, try and go, well, from day one, I have to have the best, and we have to fly because that's what this can do. And so then, processes, behaviors, planning, all of that is completely jumped, and you're expecting to fly from day one. So I guess the myth, from that is, have a look at the more basic things. At the very basic level, there was Google Street View, there was Google Expeditions, and that was a great way to introduce people to what, traveling to Machu Picchu or going to different places around the world. And there's some really lovely experiences where you can go and experience this content. I think where we sort of sit is more in the middle, where we do use 360 technology, but we're adding so much augmentation to it, and content and creativity capabilities and functions and features, that we kind of straddle both worlds. And so I guess if you are considering it, it really is about what would you like to do. Certainly if you're a high-end school or university and you need that technical capability, then you're going to go after high-end. If it is about, let's try and just introduce this and let's work our way through, take some testing learning approach and work out how we bring it into curriculum. And then, what are the pedagogies around that? Then you should be starting more at the lower end and working your way up. Yeah.
I'm sure many people will see this and now want to try VRTY. So for somebody who just logs into the website and starts to make his content, what is your advice for them?
Yeah, so I guess to sort of take a scaffolding approach, look, the first thing would be to experience a project. Not many people have actually tried an immersive project, so there are some different navigations in there. There's some different user interactions. So my recommendation would be, and we've got these on our website, some case studies where just go in and have a look, even if it's on YouTube or if it's on our site. Just go and experience what an immersive tech is. You don't have to put the headsets on. You can view in 360. I guess that's one of the great things about our product is you can view on a desktop, on a tablet, on a mobile. You don't need to put it into a headset. If you want to, you can also as well. So there are just some people who just don't like putting it on their head. And so I think the first thing would be just experience a few things and see where this technology now is. Then the second part would be what we call the build scaffold part of the process. So for anyone who wants to try VRTY, we have a free 21-day trial license, and you can just jump in and sign up. And we have this concept that we're trying to build called the VRTY library. And so we're trying to get schools, content contributors, to contribute content to that library. So then it becomes a bit of a community library where anyone now can jump in. And so a first-time user who doesn't have all the equipment can still build something, because there's 360 images there of Bondi Beach in Sydney that we've taken.
Yes.
We've got images of the Great Wall of China. We've got images of Singapore. We also have a great content contributor from Europe who's also provided footage of the Colosseum. And so you can actually go in and grab the 360 scenes and start building, and then adding your own content. So you take your own photo, and then you can be a marker that pops up on the Great Wall of China. And it's as easy as that. And then all of a sudden you can publish that project. And all of a sudden anyone who has a link to that project can view it. And I think that's probably the first two steps. Once you get to that point, you're understanding how to create, and then you get the feedback and go, oh, that was actually pretty easy. Let me create one that has 3 scenes, or let me have one that has a branch narrative, or let me try putting a video in. Or the really cool one that the students really love is we have text to voice or text to speech. Yes. And so if you want to put a marker in, you can put an image, but you can also type text into this little feature, and then you can choose a language. So you type in English, you can have an Australian accent, you can have a US accent, a British accent, you can even have different languages. So I don't think we have a Greek accent in there yet, but we'll have to put
maybe one day.
Yeah. And so then you can add, that extra element to I guess the engagement piece of a visual representation. There's an audio there. There's also some text, so you can read, and so you're kind of hitting a lot of different things. And once you test and learn through those, then you can get to a point where you say, right, I'm going to invest in the rest of the tech. I'm going to buy myself a 360 camera. I'm going to start planning this from a story, start doing design thinking all the way from the ideation all the way through to execution and sharing. But actually one short thing there is, actually, if you download the Google Street View app, which is a free app, they actually have a 360 camera feature in there. What you have to do is take your mobile phone, and then you take about 32 different photos all around you as you move around, and then the app will stitch it together for you. So then you have a 360 scene, and then you can output that and upload it to the VRTY platform. So you don't have to have a 360 camera with you. If you're at a place and you have that, you can take a 360 image. And when we were working with students in the Philippines, a lot of them have mobile phones, but they didn't have enough money to buy a camera. And so they were able to use the Street View app to take their own scenes and create their own projects. And it's this idea of our projects don't need to be Hollywood. They don't need to be polished with amazing After Effects and all these things. A lot of it is about perspective, that these students have taken the time to show their creativity and thinking and put together a story. And they're very proud of what they've produced, and they share it with their friends and their family. And so from that perspective, it's a really great sort of outcome.
This takes us back to the democratization that you mentioned at the beginning. It's really easy for everybody to use it. I've used it myself. I know it's super easy. It doesn't take more than maybe 30 minutes to learn how this whole thing works. And that's one question. I don't remember if I checked it. Is it learning management system friendly? Can you embed it onto? Yes.
Yes. So it's definitely one of the things where we're now working with that with some of the corporate clients that have a learning management system. You can actually create a SCORM compliant project and then output that which goes into your learning management system. And then also you can iframe into the projects as well. So a lot of, I guess, the next phase of development is we're starting to get not just school interest, we're getting a lot of corporate interest in terms of training, and universities as well, to then say, okay, how can we bring these projects into their current systems? And so, yeah, that's where we're sort of moving to next, that we would love this platform to integrate and work with many other people's platforms. And again, the concept of democratization is that, it needs to work with a whole range of different things, which obviously is a bit of a challenge for us to make sure that it does work across so many things. But again, if we want anybody to pick this up, and you don't just have to come from a private school in Sydney and have lots of money to do this. You could be anywhere and still have access.
That's lovely. It's very nice to always see opportunities like that for teachers. I think you've answered all of my questions. I don't know if you would like to add something else.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the opportunity here, I mean, off the back of that is, we are very much focused on this research phase at the moment. And the idea of that is to provide a lot of that guidance so that anyone thinking about taking up the technology or the VRTY platform has a little bit more guidance into how to structure things. It is still very new that, immersive technology in the education space, we aren't aligned on vernacular and what do we call things, what are these processes, there isn't rigmarole around that. So I guess we're trying to add to that, but I would say that I'd love to get content from anyone in Cyprus. And so
of course,
one of my passions would be to try and connect up schools, that if someone in Australia is trying to learn about the culture in Cyprus, then we have a school in Cyprus who potentially can partner with an Australian school, and they can share and find, get content around what Australia is currently doing. Here is an Australian outback, or here's the beach, and share that with a school in Cyprus who can then say, like, here's the King of Tombs, or here is the local village, and then share that back.
I really want to congratulate you on the work you've done here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the conversation. It was very lovely to talk with you today.
My pleasure.